Black CEO told to get lost. By Receptionist minutes later, he shuts the entire company down. Welcome to today's story, a tale brimming with tension, high-stakes intrigue, and unexpected twists that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine a bustling corporate environment filled with carefully guarded secrets, where first impressions can determine the course of entire careers. A place where one dismissive action targeted at the wrong individual triggers cataclysmic ripples throughout the organization. Today, we'll follow a driven, trailblazing CEO who arrives at a well-established company only to be met with prejudice and scorn the moment he steps through the front door. Little does anyone know that he holds the power to shut it all down, and he's not afraid to exercise that power when justice calls. Prepare to witness unexpected betrayals, shocking revelations, and karmic retribution unfolding in real time. So, settle in, buckle up, and let's venture into a dramatic sequence of events that proves you never know who you're talking to or how life can change in an instant. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. A plume of gray exhaust trailed behind the sleek black Mercedes-Benz as it slid into the visitor's parking lot of Starcrest Analytics, a once prominent consulting firm based in Chicago. Rain drummed lightly on the windshield, and the driver, an impeccably dressed man named Everett Daniels, glanced up at the towering concrete building. The faded Starcrest logo etched into the structure suggested that the company's glory days were in the past. But as a seasoned executive, Everett knew that potential could be found in the most unlikely places. He took a moment to smooth the lapels of his tailored Armani suit. A new day, a new challenge. Few people knew his name outside of certain elite circles. He had intentionally flown below the radar, preferring to let his successes speak for themselves. With an MBA from Harvard Business School and a track record of reviving moribund corporations, Everett had garnered a reputation for clean, efficient takeovers. Unknown to nearly everyone at Starcrest, Everett was here for final negotiations, a silent partner poised to acquire the struggling firm. He anticipated some friction, especially if his presence was taken lightly. Still, nothing could have prepared him for the chaotic series of events about to unfold. With the morning drizzle now tapering off, Everett took a deep breath, stepped out of his car, and headed for the main entrance. The lobby of Starcrest Analytics was grand yet eerily quiet. The marble floors were buffed to an impressive shine, but the faded motivational posters on the walls clashed with the building's aura of neglected elegance. A lone receptionist's desk was stationed ahead, complete with a nameplate that read Clarissa Johnson. Clarissa, a middle-aged woman with a tight bun and impeccably manicured nails, was engrossed in scrolling through her phone. She hardly glanced up when Everett approached. Standing a full 6 feet tall and armed with a cool confidence, Everett projected the bearing of someone who deserved respect. However, Clarissa treated him like an afterthought. "Yes?" she asked curtly, not bothering to mask her annoyance. Her eyes flicked dismissively from his polished shoes to his kind yet determined gaze. Everett offered his warmest smile. "Good morning, I'm here for a 10 o'clock meeting with..." Before he could finish, Clarissa interrupted. "Look, I don't know what you're selling, but we don't need anything. I'm pretty sure no one scheduled any appointments with outside vendors, so you can just get lost." Everett paused, taken aback by her dismissive tone. Years of corporate maneuvering had taught him to keep his composure. He extended a business card with his name on it. "I assure you, Miss Johnson, I have a very important meeting here. My name is Everett Daney." She lifted a hand, palm out, signaling him to stop. "I heard you the first time. You want me to call security, or you gonna leave on your own?" Her hostility was jarring, but Everett remained calm. He tucked the business card away and inclined his head politely. "I can wait, if you prefer. But I do have a valid reason to be here, and I'd suggest checking with your superiors." Clarissa pointed toward the glass doors leading outside. "We don't want random people wandering around. Take a hint and get lost." Everett's jaw clenched for a split second. A measured wave of disappointment and anger passed through him, but he managed a slow exhale. "I'll see myself out," he said, forcing a thin smile. He turned on his heel and walked back across the lobby, but not without taking in every detail: security cameras, discreet lounge areas, and emergency exit signs. He had arrived to salvage a company. Instead, he was treated like a trespasser. Little did Clarissa know, he was about to wield extraordinary power over Starcrest's fate. As soon as Everett stepped back outside, the wind picked up, ruffling the lapel of his suit jacket. He sidestepped a puddle while making a mental list. That receptionist's reaction was more than rude. It hinted at deeper issues within the company's culture. He fished out his phone and dialed the number of Janet Hollings, one of Starcrest's board members who had championed his acquisition plan. She answered on the second ring. "Everett, you're early. I was just about to come down and bring you up." Everett cut in with an icy calm. "I came in through the main entrance and was told to get lost by your receptionist. She refused to confirm my appointment." A brief silence. Then Janet sighed heavily. "I'm beyond embarrassed. That's Clarissa. She's new to the position, and there have been complaints. I'm on my way now. We'll straighten this out." He didn't relish humiliating someone, but he also wouldn't allow such disrespect to overshadow a crucial meeting. "I'll wait outside," he replied. Moments later, Janet, a short but formidable woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, hurried to the entrance. She apologized profusely as she guided Everett back into the lobby. Clarissa turned pale at the sight of Janet's severe expression and seemed to realize her grave mistake. Before any confrontation could erupt, Everett raised a hand subtly, signaling to Janet that he preferred to handle it later. For now, he wanted to focus on his main objective, evaluating Starcrest's operational integrity. He would not be easily swayed from a deal that might bring new opportunity, so long as the company's internal rot wasn't beyond repair. Janet led Everett through a set of frosted glass doors and down a maze-like corridor lined with cubicles. The entire floor was laid out in neat rows of desks, each equipped with dated computers. Employees sat hunched over their screens, casting furtive glances at the newcomer. Everett could sense both curiosity and anxiety in the air. More than a few recognized him from industry news, though the bulk of Starcrest's workforce remained clueless. Finally, they arrived at a large conference room. In bold letters, a sign on the glass wall read, "Strategic Meeting Area." Inside, an elongated oak table gleamed beneath halogen lights. Janet cleared her throat. "I'm sorry about the morning's incident. With luck, we can move forward smoothly from here." Everett stood near a rolling whiteboard, scanning the empty chairs. "I hope so. We have a busy schedule if we're going to finalize the acquisition." "Where is everyone else?" Janet frowned. "They were supposed to be here at 10 sharp. Let me track them down." She stepped out with her phone pressed to her ear, leaving Everett momentarily alone. He took out his notebook, reviewing bullet points for the day: corporate valuation, pending lawsuits, labor disputes, and crucially, the upcoming infiltration into the data archives. Something about Starcrest's numbers hadn't added up a discrepancy in their reported liabilities. That was the red flag that had drawn his attention in the first place. As he waited, he fiddled with a branded pen left on the table, noticing that Starcrest's official motto, "Innovation with Integrity," was stamped along its barrel. The irony wasn't lost on him. If half the rumors about shady internal dealings were true, integrity was the last word that belonged on any marketing material. He intended to find out the truth soon enough. 15 minutes later, members of Starcrest's upper management finally began to file into the conference room. First came Walter Hines, the CFO. He was a gaunt man with thinning hair and a forced grin that made Everett's instincts prickle. Next arrived Lucinda Palmer, head of human resources, a tall woman who possessed a calm, almost hypnotic presence. Then came Gerard Timmons, the company's chief operating officer, who wore an anxious expression. As introductions circled the table, Everett noticed how each manager reacted to his presence. Walter Hines maintained a practiced politeness, but his eyes flicked nervously around the room. Lucinda Palmer, on the other hand, exuded confidence as if she had nothing to hide. Gerard Timmons was the only one who managed a warm handshake and an earnest welcome. Janet sat near Everett, crossing one leg over the other with an air of unresolved tension. She coughed to break the silence. "All right, everyone. I believe you know why we're here. Mr. Daniels is a highly respected executive who has a keen interest in Starcrest's future. Let's treat him with the professionalism he deserves." nods all around. But beneath this veneer of politeness, Everett sensed hidden agendas at play. Starcrest was in dire straits, financially strapped, losing clients, and plagued by rumor. Management had been desperate enough to put out feelers for a buyout, but now some among them might be trying to keep skeletons locked tightly in their closets. Everett launched into a measured speech. I've done extensive due diligence on Starcrest, and I see potential here: strong brand recognition, a talented workforce, and operational niches that remain profitable. My intention is to revitalize, not cannibalize. But I have some concerns about transparency, particularly concerning the finance department's records. Walter Hines shifted uncomfortably. We're prepared to address any questions you may have. Everett offered a disarming smile. I appreciate that. Let's start with the numbers from the third quarter. There's a discrepancy that's quite... Suddenly, the conference room phone began ringing. Lucinda picked it up, her expression darkening. Yes. Wait, slow down. Security found what? She covered the mouthpiece, eyes darting from Everett to Janet. They found a misplaced server in the storage warehouse. Seems it was supposed to be decommissioned, but is still connected to an active network. Everett's brows rose. Interesting. A sense of quiet alarm settled over the room. Was someone in the company attempting data manipulation off the books? The tension spiked, setting the stage for a potentially explosive discovery. Once Lucinda hung up, Everett asked calmly, May I see that warehouse? Walter Hines blanched. We usually don't allow non-employees in restricted zones. Janet cleared her throat. Given the circumstances and Mr. Daniels' pending acquisition, I think we can make an exception. The room fell into a wary hush. Everett noticed a flicker of panic cross Walter's face. The CFO, it appeared, was concerned about what secrets might be unearthed in that old server. I'd like to see it, Everett reiterated. Now. Lucinda nodded, standing up. I'll escort you there. The group shuffled out of the conference room, a murmur of hushed anxieties rippling through them. As they walked the corridor, Everett caught sidelong glances from some employees. Rumors traveled fast in corporate spaces. Perhaps the story of the man told to get lost at reception was already swirling around. They descended 2 flights of stairs and entered a dimly lit corridor leading to an unmarked metal door. A keycard lock beeped as Lucinda swiped her badge. The door swung open, revealing a large storage area filled with old computers, office chairs, battered filing cabinets, and half-dismantled cubicle partitions. Near the back, a single green light blinked on a dusty black server tower, standing out like an uninvited guest in the gloom. Everett approached the server, stepping carefully around cardboard boxes marked Archive 2017. A small label on the tower read, Property of Starcrest Analytics Decommissioned 2019. Yet it was clearly active, a faint hum audible as its fans spun. Any idea who last accessed this? He asked, running a finger across the layer of dust. Gerard Timmons shrugged, but Walter Hines looked distinctly uneasy. I'll have it run a check, Walter offered. It's probably some old data repository we forgot to unplug. Everett's eyes narrowed. He wasn't convinced. I'd like to have one of my own at Specialists take a quick look, if that's not an issue. Walter hesitated, then forced a smile. Of course. Everett caught Lucinda's curious gaze. It was as if she was silently approving his determination to uncover the truth. Janet, standing behind them, appeared more distressed than ever, possibly worried about the potential scandal this might unearth. Everett tapped a quick message into his phone, summoning Teresa Lau, a trusted consultant he often worked with during acquisitions. Teresa, known for her no-nonsense efficiency and impeccable track record, was already in the building's cafe, awaiting instructions. It wouldn't take her long to arrive. While waiting for Teresa, Everett and the others returned to the conference room. He studied Starcrest's management across the table, Walter with a veneer of forced calm, Lucinda in quiet contemplation, Gerard tapping his pen nervously, and Janet fidgeting with a binder. Each carried secrets. The question was, whose secrets threatened to derail the acquisition? Teresa arrived within minutes. Petite with short cropped hair and a bold manner, she exuded competence. She plugged a laptop into a projector. We'll do a quick mirror of that server's drive. Then we'll see what it's connected to. Walter slid lower in his seat. Shouldn't we get legal clearance first? He ventured. Teresa fixed him with a confident look. As far as I understand, Mr. Daniels is in the final stages of an acquisition that grants him certain privileges to conduct due diligence. This server is company property, so we're free to inspect it. Walter swallowed hard and didn't argue. Within minutes, Teresa had the server's contents mirrored onto her laptop. Lines of code scrolled across the projector screen, revealing a labyrinth of documents, spreadsheets, and email archives. The group watched, tense, as Teresa navigated folders labeled with cryptic abbreviations. She said, opening one file. Looks like this references some external accounts. Shell companies, possibly. Large sums of money moving offshore, and here she highlighted another folder. Employee profiles, payroll adjustments, bank account numbers. This is more than old junk data. Someone has been actively routing funds through external channels. A hush fell over the room. The scope of wrongdoing was staggering. Everett felt adrenaline surge. The deeper Teresa dug, the more it became clear that Starcrest was a breeding ground for corruption. When Teresa finished her initial review, she looked to Everett. This is sophisticated. Whoever set it up has been funneling money out of Starcrest for at least 2 years. The server's role was to keep these transactions off the official books. If we cross-reference these numbers with official statements, we'll likely find no mention of them at all. Possibly a high-level embezzlement scheme. Walter Hines spoke up, face pale. That's impossible. We have checks and balances in place. Our accounting team would catch something like that, but his voice quivered with uncertainty. Everett studied Walter's expression. You're the CFO. You mean to tell me you've never noticed these discrepancies? Walter stammered. I'll have to investigate. Maybe it's the work of a rogue employee or someone with old system access. Everett considered the possibility that Walter himself might be involved. So could Lucinda or Gerard, or even Janet, though she seemed genuinely disturbed by these revelations. To complicate matters, Starcrest's board had offered him a chance to buy the company at a suspiciously low price. Did they suspect that an embezzlement scandal was about to blow up? Janet finally found her voice. No matter who's behind this, we need to fix it. If word gets out about major corruption, this acquisition might be the least of our worries. We're talking potential lawsuits, criminal charges, all of it. Everett nodded gravely. I agree. We need to figure this out quickly. For now, let's keep this under wraps until we have more concrete evidence. Teresa, focus on identifying the key players behind these transactions. He refused to let the situation slip out of control. Despite the swirling storm of possible treachery, one thing was certain: the seeds of Starcrest's downfall might already be sown. If the wrongdoing was pervasive enough, shutting the company down might be the only viable recourse. Yet something in him still hoped to salvage its potential and protect the innocent employees who had no idea how close they were to catastrophe. By midday, the atmosphere in Starcrest's building resembled a tightly coiled spring. Rumors of hidden servers and corporate spies swirled among the employees, fueling paranoia. Clarissa, the receptionist, scurried around with an anxious demeanor. She had clearly been reprimanded for her earlier outburst, though she seemed more resentful than remorseful. Meanwhile, Everett's team set up a makeshift command center in a smaller meeting room. Teresa and 2 additional IT specialists pored over thousands of documents, searching for patterns or hints about who orchestrated the financial misconduct. Each new revelation felt like turning over a rock to find more rot hidden beneath. At a catered lunch in the break room, Everett sat with Janet and Gerard to discuss next steps. A simple Caesar salad sat untouched on his plate. Gerard sipped from a Starbucks coffee cup, eyes flicking nervously toward the door. Janet leaned in, voice hushed. I'm worried, Everett. If the corruption is extensive, the entire leadership might be implicated. Are you still sure you want to acquire this mess? Everett pressed his lips together, weighing the question. I need to see it through. I owe it to the honest workers here and to the legacy of what Starcrest once stood for. But I'm not going to let criminals run amok. He paused, then fixed Janet with a penetrating gaze. Is there anyone in particular you suspect? Janet inhaled sharply. I don't have proof. But Walter's been acting cagey for months. There have also been rumors about Lucinda's close ties to external HR consulting firms, which might be a conflict of interest. Gerard, to my knowledge, is clean. He's just incompetent at times. but I can't be sure about anyone. Gerard bristled slightly, but didn't protest. His eyes betrayed worry. Everett decided to handle each potential suspect carefully. For all he knew, there was a larger conspiracy at play. The final outcome could be catastrophic or redemptive, depending on what they uncovered. That afternoon, while scanning archived email threads in the command center, Teresa gestured for Everett to join her. "There's something you need to see," she said quietly, pulling up an old email labeled with the subject line, "Policy Adjustment Confidential." The email was from an external domain, not officially Starcrest's, but it was signed with the initials WH. The body of the message detailed instructions for adjusting employee benefits packages to free up additional budget lines. The instructions ended with cryptic notes about funneling excess funds through a shell corporation. Teresa pointed to the screen. WHCOULD be Walter Hines. But it might be someone using his initials to deflect blame. Everett's jaw tensed. Walter is CFO, so it wouldn't be surprising if he orchestrated financial manipulations. But I won't jump to conclusions yet. Another email chain revealed direct communication between the same external address and someone calling themselves LP. The instructions grew even more brazen. Shift the health insurance surpluses to the overseas account. Maintain stealth. LP and WH seemed intimately coordinated. LP could very well be Lucinda Palmer. A cold weight settled in Everett's stomach. Two of Starcrest's top executives might be in cahoots, siphoning corporate funds while also slashing benefits for employees. Everett took a deep breath. "Teresa, keep looking for more evidence tying these emails directly to them. We can't afford guesswork." A silent moment passed, thick with moral outrage. If the CFO and HR head were indeed behind this, they were stealing not just money, but also the security and well-being of Starcrest's workforce. The revelation steeled Everett's resolve. He would see justice done. At 2 p.m., Everett had a scheduled lunch with Walter Hines. The CFO had personally invited him to the executive dining room, a glass-enclosed space overlooking the Chicago skyline. No doubt Walter intended to charm Everett or glean inside information. Walter arrived late, wearing a crisp navy suit and a carefully practiced grin. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Busy day with the accountants. Let's order, shall we?" Everett nodded, subtly scanning Walter's demeanor. The man seemed intent on small talk, discussing the city's upcoming marathon, local sports teams, and the stock market. Only after their salads arrived did Walter lean in conspiratorially. "Look, Everett, Starcrest is a big ship, a lot of moving parts. I've heard some chatter that you found some old server with questionable data. You know how these corporate rumors get blown out of proportion? If you need clarifications, I'm happy to provide them." Everett maintained an impassive expression. "We did find an old server. My team is investigating. Do you have any insights into who might have set it up?" Walter shrugged, feigning ignorance. "Hard to say. Could have been any number of our IT staff or maybe a prior CFO. We've had turnover in that role, but rest assured, I'll help in any way I can." Though Walter's tone was smooth, Everett detected a subtle flicker of fear in his eyes. "I appreciate that," Everett replied. "Trust me, I want to root out any wrongdoing. You might have inherited a problem that started years ago." Walter's eyebrows rose. "Exactly. See, that's what I mean. It's probably historical. I want to ensure you that Starcrest's current leadership is aligned with your vision." Everett silently vowed to test that claim. But outwardly, he gave a polite nod, letting the CFO think he was buying into the story. He'd seen this kind of preemptive misdirection before, someone hoping to calm a crisis before it could expose them. If Walter was truly innocent, he was doing an awful lot of deflecting. After lunch, Everett made a point to pass by the main lobby. He had noticed earlier that Clarissa, the receptionist who had told him to get lost, was glaring at him with thinly veiled hostility whenever their paths crossed. This time, he decided to address the matter directly, not to humiliate her, but to see if she harbored ill feelings that might link to something deeper. Clarissa was fiddling with her computer when Everett approached. She stiffened, forcing a tight smile. "Yes, Mr. Daniels?" She pronounced his name with an unmistakable sneer. "I want to clear the air," Everett said calmly. "I understand there might have been a misunderstanding this morning." Her mouth pressed into a firm line. "I was just doing my job. We get a lot of unsolicited visitors. He nodded slowly. I can respect gatekeeping measures. However, your approach was a bit aggressive. She looked away, clicking a pen repeatedly. That's how they trained me to handle it. Everett tilted his head, intrigued. Who trained you? You're fairly new, right? Clarissa shrugged, her voice low enough that others in the lobby couldn't overhear. Someone from HR gave me an orientation, told me to keep out questionable individuals, especially if they looked like they didn't belong. Everett's eyes narrowed. That phrasing carried an undertone of prejudice. It seemed Clarissa had been emboldened to discriminate based on superficial judgments. Which person from HR? She hesitated. Lucinda Palmer, head of HR. Look, I'm not saying she told me to discriminate, but she made it clear I should be wary of certain visitors. Everett processed this, suspecting that Lucinda's instructions might have been more nefarious than standard protocol. The casual prejudice Clarissa displayed could be an extension of Lucinda's broader attitudes. Was racism fueling some of the toxic culture? Or was it simply part of Lucinda's desire to control who had access to the building? Thank you for clarifying, Everett said at last. And you should know, I don't hold grudges. But I won't tolerate disrespect or bigotry either. I'm sure you understand. Clarissa swallowed, her expression hardening into grudging acknowledgement. Everett walked away, more convinced than ever that Starcrest's internal issues were layered, deeply ingrained, and orchestrated by the very people who should have been fostering inclusivity. Early evening arrived, and Everett found himself in Starcrest's executive suite on the top floor, a sprawling space with panoramic city views. He stood by a massive window, scanning the glittering Chicago skyline as dusk settled in. The day's revelations weighed on him like a lead vest. Janet joined him, offering a sympathetic smile. Long day, huh? Everett let out a slow breath. You could say that. I've uncovered evidence of serious corruption, possible racial bias, and a toxic culture. This is more than I bargained for. The question is whether Starcrest is salvageable or if I should shut it down. Janet lowered her gaze. Please don't give up on the good people here. Most employees have no clue what's happening behind the scenes. Shutting it down would devastate them. Everett nodded. I'm not making any rash decisions, but if upper management is irredeemably corrupt, it might be the only solution. I'll find a way to protect employees if it comes to that. Their conversation was interrupted by the buzzing of Janet's cell phone. She glanced at it, frowning. Walter wants an impromptu meeting in the boardroom. He says it's urgent. A flicker of apprehension passed between them. Everett followed Janet out, neither sure what to expect. If Walter sensed that the noose of suspicion was tightening around his neck, perhaps he was desperate to control the narrative or bury the evidence. In the boardroom, Walter sat at the head of a sleek mahogany table, joined by Lucinda Palmer and Gerard Timmons. Their expressions ranged from stoic to nervous. There was no time for pleasantries before Walter launched into a practice speech. I've just learned that Mr. Daniels has unauthorized personnel digging through confidential company data, Walter stated, voice booming with feigned outrage. This is a breach of our protocols, and it could expose us to liability. Therefore, I must insist that all such investigations cease immediately. Everett locked eyes with him. You're referring to my IT consultant, Teresa Lau. She's working under my authority to conduct due diligence in a potential acquisition that's hardly unauthorized. Lucinda chimed in, smoothing her pencil skirt. Walter's right. Even if you're buying Starcrest, you're not yet the owner. We need to preserve the confidentiality of data until the paperwork is finalized. Gerard looked as though he wanted to slink under the table. Janet spoke up, voice firm. Mr. Daniels is working under the explicit direction of the board. If you have an issue, take it up with them. Walter's jaw clenched. As CFO, it's my responsibility to ensure we don't hand over sensitive information to an outsider. I'm halting all data access until the sale is signed and sealed. Everett's heartbeat thundered with anger. He recognized this as a desperate move to obstruct the investigation. That's suspicious timing, he said quietly, given what we've discovered on that server. Walter scoffed, slamming his palm on the table. We found nothing illegal or unethical. Old files, that's all. Now, are you going to comply or not? Everett could feel the tension coiling in the room like a venomous snake. He leveled a cool gaze at Walter. If you think you can intimidate me into ignoring evidence of embezzlement, think again. The board invited me here specifically to uncover the truth. And if you've got something to hide, no last-minute stalling tactic will save you. Lucinda exhaled through flared nostrils. You speak as though you've already decided we're guilty. This is an ambush, pure and simple. Everett's temper flared. An ambush? He gestured to the three of them. If anyone's staging an ambush, it's you. Look at yourselves scrambling to bury evidence. Tell me something. Why would innocent people be so desperate to hide data? Gerard's pen shook in his hand. He looked at Walter and Lucinda, then back to Everett. His lips parted as though he might confess something, but no words came out. Finally, he stared at the table, resigned. Without waiting for a reply, Everett strode toward the door. We can finish this conversation when the rest of the board is present. Until then, Teresa's investigation continues. Walter barked after him. You step out that door, and you'll face immediate legal action for violating Starcrest's confidentiality agreements. Everett paused in the doorway, turning slowly. I face down bigger threats than you. By the time this is over, you might wish you'd never tried to silence me. With that, he left, pulse pounding in his ears. Outside the boardroom, Everett took a moment to calm himself. He checked his phone, no missed calls from the board. He considered contacting them directly to counter Walter's threats. But first, he needed confirmation of wrongdoing. Hard evidence. He rushed back to the command center, where Teresa was busy analyzing new data. Two monitors displayed complex flowcharts mapping out suspicious financial transfers. Teresa looked up, alarmed. Bad meeting? Everett nodded. Walter and Lucinda just threatened legal action if we continue digging. They want us to stop. That's all the confirmation I need that we're on to something. Where do we stand on linking these funds back to them definitively? Teresa pointed to a cluster of highlighted lines on the flowchart. We've found multiple connections to external shell corporations. They trace back to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Both sets of accounts are managed by entities controlled by two individuals, W. Hines and L. Palmer. The digital signatures match the email addresses we saw earlier. Everett felt a grim satisfaction. So they are the culprits. What about Gerard Timmons? Is he involved? Teresa frowned. He's on some internal memos referencing cost-cutting measures. But so far, he doesn't appear to be part of the funneling operation. He might just be a bystander or a reluctant participant, not sure yet. Everett folded his arms. Thoughts racing. If Walter and Lucinda were truly behind this, they'd do anything to cover it up. If they realized they might face criminal charges, they could attempt to destroy the evidence. Time was running out. Janet rushed in, breathless. Everett, the rest of the board is convening an emergency meeting in an hour. Walter's already spinning a story to them about you overstepping your bounds. But I've told them everything that's happened. They want to hear your side. Everett nodded. Good. We have what we need. Let's make sure we get it to them securely. A swirl of questions tugged at his mind. Would the board side with him? Could Starcrest be salvaged once Walter and Lucinda were removed? Or would the entire corporation be tarnished beyond rescue? Just as Everett prepared to head for the board meeting, an urgent text message from one of Teresa's colleagues, Kevin, made his phone buzz. They're shutting down main servers. Attempting data wipe. Stop them. Everett sucked in a sharp breath. They're wiping evidence, he said to Teresa, rushing out the door. She followed him at a sprint. The pair dashed through the hallways, ignoring the startled looks of staff. They reached the IT department on the lower floor, where Kevin was barricading the door against two burly men in security uniforms. They came in here on Walter's orders, said they have to disable unauthorized access, Kevin exclaimed. Everett quickly flashed his phone camera at the security guards. Gentlemen, you need to stand down. I'm authorized by the board to conduct an investigation. If you proceed, you'll face legal repercussions. One guard, a beefy man with a mustache, hesitated. Walter Hines said, I outrank Walter Hines. Everett growled. If you're unsure, call the board. Now, move aside. The guards exchanged uncertain looks and stepped back. Everett, Teresa, and Kevin hurried into the server room, where a console displayed a progress bar labeled Data Erasure in Progress, 65% complete. Teresa dashed to the nearest terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I'll try to abort the wipe. Kevin, see if you can isolate the backup drives. Everett hovered behind them, adrenaline pounding. We can't lose that data. It's the proof we need to expose Walter and Lucinda. The progress bar ticked up to 70%, 75%, 80%. Teresa cursed under her breath. They've locked the admin account. I'm hacking in, but it's tough. Kevin rummaged through a drawer, pulling out a portable drive. We made a mirror of most of the data earlier, but not all. We need time to copy the rest. As the progress bar hit 90%, Teresa finally broke through. She hammered the keyboard, commanding the server to abort the process. 10 seconds crawled by before the display flickered, and the cancellation prompt appeared. The progress bar froze at 92%, then disappeared. A collective sigh of relief swept the room. Kevin quickly began copying the critical data to an offline drive. Teresa glared at the halted process. They nearly destroyed everything. Everett ran a hand over his face. We have enough evidence to present to the board. Let's finalize it before Walter tries something else. This ends now. 30 minutes later, Everett and Janet entered the largest boardroom in the building, an imposing space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 9 board members sat around an ornate table, each wearing an expression of concern or impatience. Walter Hines and Lucinda Palmer stood at the far side of the room, with Gerard Timmons seated nearby, looking miserably caught in the middle. As Everett took a seat, the chair of the board, Philip Campbell, an older man with silver hair and a stately bearing, cleared his throat. I've heard conflicting stories about what's going on. Walter insists there's been a breach of company protocol. Janet claims we have discovered large-scale corruption. Mr. Daniels, kindly explain. Everett rose, meeting each board member's gaze in turn. Earlier today, my team located a decommissioned server that was still active. On it, we found evidence of extensive embezzlement and offshore accounts tied to top executives. We nearly lost that data due to a forced wipe orchestrated by Walter, who threatened legal action if we continued investigating. Thankfully, we preserved the evidence. A ripple of shocked murmurs flowed across the table. Philip's stern gaze settled on Walter. Is this true, Mr. Hines? Walter shook his head vigorously, adopting a righteous fury. Absolutely not. This is a baseless accusation. Any hidden server was likely an outdated system that no one had gotten around to removing. As for the data, Mr. Daniels is misconstruing normal transactions. He's on a witch hunt. Lucinda nodded in agreement. We have ironclad procedures in place. These alleged shell companies are probably standard vendor accounts. Everett inserted a USB drive into a laptop connected to a large screen on the wall. Then, how do you explain these email threads and transaction logs? He opened a folder titled Starcrest Fraud Evidence, revealing archived messages between WH and LP instructing the redirection of funds. The logs showed a steady outflow of money to suspicious offshore accounts. Walter's face turned crimson. Lucinda's eyes flickered with anger. The rest of the board watched in stunned silence. Finally, Philip gestured for Everett to continue. Everett navigated to a spreadsheet listing specific amounts, dates, and recipient accounts. These records match ghost transactions in Starcrest's financial statements. In total, we're talking about embezzlement exceeding $15 million over 2 years. And as you can see, the digital signatures trace back to Walter Hines and Lucinda Palmer. A collective gasp followed. Some board members shook their heads in disbelief. Walter sputtered. This is a setup. He's manipulating the data to sabotage us. Everett turned to Teresa, standing quietly by the door. Teresa is a respected expert with impeccable credentials. She can verify the chain of custody for the data. We also have multiple backups, so tampering on our end is impossible. Philip's gaze was icy. Walter, Lucinda cared to explain these specific correspondences? Lucinda's composure cracked. We delegated tasks to staff. Maybe someone else used our credentials. There's no proof it was truly us behind it. The board members exchanged skeptical looks. Then Janet produced a separate folder. I've pulled bank statements for Walter and Lucinda from public records. Each has suspicious deposits matching the timelines on those transaction logs. Walter's fists clenched, as though he wanted to lash out physically. Lucinda's lips formed a thin line. Neither had a plausible explanation left. Sensing their unmasking, Walter tried one last Hail Mary. Even if some funds were redirected, it was all in the interest of Starcrest legitimate tax shelters, strategic investments. I might have overstepped, but I did it to keep the company afloat. Philip cut him off. That's not how the board authorized you to operate. Tax shelters must be done transparently. These offshore accounts were hidden. The board never approved them. Lucinda, eyes burning, hissed under her breath. Don't you all see? This is a coup by an outsider who wants to buy us cheap and dismantle the company for profit. Everett stood firm. I had every intention of preserving and revitalizing Starcrest. Still do unless your corruption runs too deep. You can't blame me for uncovering the truth. My team and I just followed the money. Philip exchanged a glance with the other board members. They nodded in grave unison. Walter Hines and Lucinda Palmer, the evidence is overwhelming. You're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Security will escort you off the premises. We'll conduct a formal audit and press criminal charges if warranted. Walter glared daggers at Everett. You smug. He bit off the insult. You have no idea what you've done. Starcrest can't survive this scandal. Everett held his gaze. Better to expose the truth than let a corporation rot from within. Gerard Timmons exhaled shakily, apparently relieved he wasn't implicated. Walter stormed out, with Lucinda stomping behind him, both flanked by security. The boardroom door slammed shut, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Philip turned to Everett. Well, that's settled. Now, about the future of this company. Everett inhaled deeply, bracing himself for what came next. The damages could be significant. We'll need a thorough forensic investigation, immediate structural reforms, and new leadership. I'm prepared to move forward with the acquisition on adjusted terms, provided we can salvage Starcrest's reputation. The board conferred quietly, then Philip extended his hand. We'll support your plan, Mr. Daniels, so long as it keeps our employees' best interests in mind. Everett shook his hand, the tension in the room receding. It seemed the immediate threat had passed, but the question of Starcrest's viability remained. One thing was certain. The toxic elements that had nearly destroyed the company had been exposed. The next morning, a swirl of headlines dominated local news outlets. Starcrest Analytics CFO and HR head fired amid embezzlement allegations. Drone footage captured Walter and Lucinda leaving the building, escorted by armed security. A statement from the board announced that Everett Daniels was taking over as interim CEO, pending final acquisition approvals. While many employees celebrated the removal of leaders they suspected were corrupt, others worried for their jobs. Everett wasted no time meeting with staff, reassuring them that he would implement fair changes. He even set up a dedicated hotline for whistleblowers to report any additional wrongdoing. The mood in the company transformed overnight, from oppressive dread to cautious optimism. Rumor had it that Walter and Lucinda had fled Chicago to avoid public scrutiny, but it didn't take long for the authorities to catch up with them. Within a week, both were taken into custody, indicted on charges of grand larceny, fraud, and money laundering. The once confident CFO and HR head now faced decades behind bars. Amid this upheaval, a surprising twist emerged. Gerard Timmons, who was not implicated in the scandal, stepped forward with valuable insider details. It turned out he'd been pressured to sign off on suspicious cost-cutting measures, but he had secretly documented everything. Uneasy about the ethics of it, his records further cemented the case against Walter and Lucinda. In exchange for his cooperation, Gerard retained his position under Everett's watchful eye, though with strict oversight. Days later, standing in the same lobby where he was once told to get lost, Everett addressed the entire Starcrest staff. He spoke about accountability, transparency, and building a better future. Clarissa stood off to the side, looking uneasy. After his speech, she approached quietly, eyes downcast. Mr. Daniels, I'm sorry. Everett, remembering her sneer, felt a mixture of frustration and empathy. We all make mistakes. Just remember, you never know who might walk through that door. She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. Miss Palmer told me to watch for certain people. She said it was part of company policy. I see now how wrong that was. Everett placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Don't let someone else's prejudice become your own. That's not how we'll do things from now on. With that, he left her to grapple with the realization that her biased behavior might have cost her dearly. However, Everett, focusing on transformation rather than punishment, allowed her a second chance under the new HR guidelines. She wasn't entirely off the hook, but if she put in genuine effort to change, there might be a place for her. In the following weeks, Everett spearheaded a massive restructuring. He hired new accountants, new compliance officers, and a fresh HR lead from an external firm with a stellar reputation. Financial audits were conducted, and the records proved that the funds stolen by Walter and Lucinda were substantial. The scandal also revealed that the duo had personally orchestrated pay cuts, manipulated benefits, and refused raises, directly profiting at the expense of employees. Everett publicly announced that he would make every effort to recover the stolen funds. Negotiations with insurance carriers and legal entities proceeded at a grueling pace, but the message to the workforce was clear. Starcrest would no longer tolerate unethical behavior. Over time, old clients who drifted away began to return, enticed by Everett's new corporate vision. His carefully honed track record of salvaging companies in distress helped reassure investors. With each passing day, morale improved. Employees who once dreaded coming to work now felt they had a stake in the company's brighter future. Not all was smooth sailing. Walter and Lucinda had lawyers who mounted aggressive defenses, claiming the evidence against them was fabricated. They filed countersuits against Starcrest, accusing Everett of corporate sabotage and racial bias. The irony of that last accusation wasn't lost on anyone who remembered Clarissa's instructions from Lucinda. Yet, as depositions continued, the truth became undeniable. Gerard Timmons's thorough documentation and the forensic analysis of emails, transactions, and testimonies from employees further discredited Walter and Lucinda's claims. Their last-ditch legal maneuvers only mired them deeper in scandal. Another obstacle emerged when Starcrest's largest investor threatened to pull out if the company didn't maintain certain profit margins. Everett and Janet scrambled to reassure them that recovery would be swift. Negotiations were tense, but ultimately, the investor remained, persuaded by Everett's integrity and strategic plan. Months went by. During this time, Everett finalized the acquisition, cementing his role as Starcrest's CEO. Under his leadership, the company underwent a rebranding campaign, updating its logo and motto to Starcrest Analytics, Innovation with Honor. The revised mission statement carried a promise of transparency and dedication to ethical business practices. To enhance authenticity, Everett invited a third-party auditing firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to review Starcrest's finances quarterly for the next 3 years. This move reassured stakeholders that the days of hidden servers and clandestine offshore accounts were long gone. Employee satisfaction soared. The HR department, revitalized by new leadership, rolled out better benefit packages, fair compensation, and regular town hall meetings where staff could voice concerns. Everett encouraged an open-door policy, fostering a culture where even the newest hire felt confident that their opinions mattered. For Everett, the journey wasn't just about saving a corporation. It was about challenging the subtle, insidious discrimination that lurked in corners of the corporate world. Walking through Starcrest's halls, he sometimes recalled the moment Clarissa told him to get lost, how those words stung. A painful reminder that prejudice often resides where you least expect it. But now, as employees smiled and greeted him warmly, he saw evidence that hearts and minds could change. The scandal had forced an awakening, not just for Starcrest, but for everyone who witnessed the downfall of arrogant executives who believed they were above the law. In a dramatic court hearing, Walter Hines and Lucinda Palmer were both found guilty of felony embezzlement and fraud. The judge condemned their actions in scathing terms, highlighting how their greed harmed countless employees and nearly destroyed an entire company. The verdict delivered a measure of closure for Starcrest's workforce. In the end, Walter was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, while Lucinda received 10 years. Their personal finances were seized to repay some of the misappropriated funds, though the total amounted to only a fraction of what they had stolen. The day of the verdict, Everett received a flurry of texts from relieved employees. Some posted triumphant messages on LinkedIn, praising the company's transformation under his leadership. It felt like a pivotal moment, the final atonement for the anguish inflicted on so many. 3 months after the trial, Starcrest's new direction proved successful. The company landed a lucrative consulting contract with Boeing, a major milestone that signaled renewed industry confidence. Revenues began to climb, and internal satisfaction surveys revealed the highest morale in years. During a special company-wide video call, Everett announced that Starcrest would partner with local charities in Chicago to support underprivileged youth. It was a personal initiative for Everett, who firmly believed in giving back. His philanthropic vision inspired employees to volunteer and organize fundraisers. The transformation felt surreal. This was the very company that had once nearly self-destructed from corruption and prejudice. Now, it stood as a beacon of corporate turnaround, offering hope that even the most tarnished brand could be redeemed with the right leadership. Life rarely moves in a straight line, and there were still twists to come. Late one evening, Everett received a frantic call from Clarissa. She was sobbing, speaking incoherently about a break-in at her apartment. When Everett managed to calm her down, he learned that a close relative of Lucinda Palmer had apparently tried to track Clarissa down to intimidate her, believing Clarissa had cooperated in building the case against Lucinda. The next morning, Everett met Clarissa in his office, listening patiently as she recounted the terrifying incident. She offered an apology and confessed that her behavior on that first day had stemmed from ingrained biases and fear of losing her job if she didn't do exactly what Lucinda instructed. She vowed she would stand up against any intimidation and was determined to grow as a person. Everett placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. No one at Starcrest will face threats alone. If you want to press charges, I'll have our legal team and security department help you. You're not by yourself in this. Clarissa, tears welling up again, thanked him. It was a powerful moment of mutual understanding that transcended the fiasco of that first hostile encounter. Symbolically, it demonstrated how thoroughly Starcrest's culture had shifted. Meanwhile, Teresa and her team continued to refine Starcrest's digital security. In the process, they stumbled upon hidden backup drives containing personal diaries and voice memos from older executives, some dating back a decade. While many logs were outdated, one set of files contained shocking confessions from the company's founder, admitting to bribing local officials for zoning permits when Starcrest first expanded. The board weighed how to handle these revelations. Ultimately, they decided to release a carefully worded statement acknowledging that past ethical violations extended beyond Walter and Lucinda. While the company had no legal obligation to disclose these older misdeeds, Everett believed transparency was paramount. A scandal from a decade ago might taint Starcrest's new image, but burying it would only perpetuate the cycle of secrecy. In a press conference, Everett stated, "The Starcrest of old was built on flawed foundations. We will confront every ghost that comes to light. Our mission to restore integrity is absolute. We accept responsibility for the past, and we commit to an honorable future." The public response was largely positive, appreciating the openness. Competitors tried to exploit the admissions, but ironically, Starcrest's candor earned respect from clients and the general public alike. A year after Everett's arrival, Starcrest's turnaround was nearly complete. The workforce had stabilized, the balance sheets were healthy, and clients flocked to a reinvented firm that prided itself on integrity. Key media outlets like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal ran features about Starcrest's remarkable resurrection story. In the final steps of restructuring, Everett consolidated various departments and trimmed unnecessary bureaucracy. He also negotiated a deal with Microsoft to integrate advanced analytics platforms into Starcrest's offerings, further modernizing the company's core competencies. On a brisk winter morning, Everett was making his rounds when he spotted Clarissa greeting a group of visitors. She smiled warmly at them, taking time to verify their appointments without a hint of the hostility she'd once shown him. Catching Everett's eye across the lobby, she offered a respectful nod, an unspoken testament to how far they'd both come. Starcrest's saga had begun with humiliation, prejudice, and the threat of total collapse. It ended with a renewal of purpose and a vindication for everyone who believed that justice could triumph over greed. The person once told to get lost in the lobby had not only stayed, he had become the leader who brought Starcrest back from the brink. Of course, not every problem was solved overnight. Challenges still arose, and the road ahead had its bumps. Yet the difference now was that Starcrest faced those challenges with a new sense of unity and principle. Employees held their heads high, their hearts fueled by a belief in the company's mission. And for Everett Daniels, the turning point remained crystal clear. That moment when a seemingly insignificant receptionist tried to dismiss him, unaware he was the man set to reshape everything. It served as a reminder that underestimating someone based on appearance is a fool's errand, and that the future can pivot on a single act of disrespect. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster journey filled with tension, revelations, and redemption. From the moment our unassuming CEO was told to get lost to the final transformation of Starcrest Analytics, we've witnessed how justice can prevail against even the most insidious forms of corruption. In the end, wrongdoing was exposed, lessons were learned, and a company on the brink of collapse discovered the power of genuine leadership and integrity.